and welcome to the show. I'm Peter Whittle. Now, before I introduce this week's guest, just wanted to draw your attention to a new site which is connected to us, the New Culture Forum. It is westerncivilization.co.uk. And there, if you go there, you can see all of the episodes of our highly acclaimed series, The West. If you haven't already watched it, 6-part series, please do, because it's really wonderful. And it's the kind of thing that the BBC would once have done maybe, but increasingly, well, decades ago, not anymore. So it befell to us really to do it. And Mark Sidwell wrote and presented it. It was beautifully directed by Ollie Hurson. And anyway, we've collected them all together on this one site. So do pay it a visit, won't you? westerncivilization.co.uk. Anyway, my guest today, back unfortunately to the nitty-gritty of saving Western civilization, is Ben Dybowski. He is a teacher. You might already have read about his case in the newspapers, or indeed if you watch GB News. But he was fired by his school simply for stating his views, his Christian views, after actually having been invited to do that very thing. This is a terrible case, actually, Ben. Thanks very much for joining us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I know that might have sounded rather confusing, but it's a kind of important thing, isn't it? You work at the school, and you went and took part in a seminar which was supposedly a free, safe space, wasn't it?
And we were encouraged to speak.
Can you just tell us from the beginning then, what was that about, and then what was it that you said that caused the trouble?
Of course, yeah. Let me just clarify one thing before I start.
Yeah.
At that school and the previous one, I worked as a teacher assistant.
Yep.
In my career, I worked as a teacher as well, most of the time,
right,
as a teacher of English as a foreign language for private language schools, which, thank God, were not affected to the same degree by political correctness and all this stuff that we are discussing now that's going on in state schools. So I was there as a teacher assistant. Anyway, I started working there in October the previous year. I had been getting good reviews. I was liked by the pupils. I liked the pupils. I liked the staff. I thought the school, in most respects, was a good school. So anyway, in March, so after some 5 months since I started or so, there was what it's called an inset day, like an internal training for staff. And one of the items was a seminar on diversity and inclusion, of all things.
Surprise, surprise.
Yes. And at the end, I just asked a genuine question, because when I had been listening to the speaker from an organization called Diverse Camry, an external organization, a lady who described herself somewhere as a bisexual campaigner for change with links to Stonewall as well.
Yeah.
So when I was listening to her, it struck me that it wasn't very surprising, but it struck me that according to her definition of discrimination, because that was one of the subjects discussed, a mere mention of someone's views could be regarded as discrimination. It wasn't stated clearly, but that was the gist. That was the I think the message one might get. So I wanted to clarify that, and I asked her how does she define discrimination, and I asked simply whether a mere expressing of someone's opinions could be viewed as discrimination. I illustrated that question with 3 of my views. I said they are sometimes seen as controversial. So I would like to make sure or hear from you whether someone could view this as discrimination. And I mentioned 3 pretty mainstream for Christian beliefs. If you're an Orthodox Christian, yes.
Yeah.
One of them was the first one I mentioned is that for me, I think I made it clear that I believe. So I wasn't even trying to impose or if just announce from high, this is what it is. I might believe so, but I didn't phrase it like that. I said, I believe true marriage is between a man and a woman. I added, I acknowledged that the state allows other options legally, so I said that's fine, but for me, it's a union between a man and a woman. The second view or belief I mentioned was that human life, for me, according to my beliefs, starts at conception and should be protected from that moment.
Right.
And the third one was that I am critical of some aspects of Islam, of Sharia law.
Sharia?
Yes. I didn't specify, but it's a kind of obvious in Western society. I know it's when you phrase it directly like that, some people will find it controversial, but I don't think there's anybody in the Western world that would say, yes, I believe it makes sense to put people in prison or worse if they decide to change religion, convert to another religion, or if they are active homosexuals. Yeah. I don't think anybody would volunteer to say yes.
Particular part in the Islam one, what you said, was there a particular example you gave, or?
No, with this one I didn't want to prolong because it was in the end of I think the whole seminar lasted nearly 2 hours. Right. So I just joined for the second part because my department had been involved in another seminar, but then for the last hour I joined this one. So anyway, the woman said that it was a very interesting reply, that of course holding those views is perfectly fine, but expressing them might be discrimination. So I asked the follow-up question. I suggested maybe tolerance would be a better maybe term, that we don't have to, because there was a lot of the talk was about a need to embrace things, embrace, and as I don't obviously need to explain it here, but very often we tolerate things. There are views we don't like, we don't think they are correct views, but we simply get along with them or with people who hold them,
Yes, doesn't necessarily mean you have to celebrate.
Absolutely. So I suggested tolerance. I can't remember exactly what she answered. It wasn't it was a bit vague for me, but I didn't want to extend it for too long, so that I left it. And this is where it all started. I actually expected that maybe someone will say something informally to me after that, because I realized saying openly these things, which are, by the way, believed by all Orthodox Christians, whether Anglican, whether Catholic. I have Catholic beliefs. I was brought up Catholic, and I remain a Catholic, although I'm not a poster Catholic at the moment because of some situations in my personal life, but still I hold Catholic beliefs. So, I might think, someone might talk about, yes, of course, we understand, all Christians believe this. We are also a Christian school, but don't talk too much about this because some people might get upset or something like this. But I didn't expect what happened the next day.
But before we go to the next day, can you just explain to us what was the physical situation with the meeting? How many people were there? What was it?
All the staff was supposed to be there. So my guess would be between 70 and 100. Maybe 100 would be an exaggeration. Honestly, I think I put the figure for the article that appeared in Mail on Sunday. When they asked me this, I said about 80. But I mean, it could be easily verified to check how many staff. But it's quite a big room.
It's quite a big room, not just some little people around a table.
No. All the staff was teachers and teacher assistants were supposed to be there.
Okay. So the next day.
Yes, the next day, the second lesson, before it started, the head of my department, it was like special educational care section of the school, was waiting outside the classroom where I was to be working, and she said, Ben, the headmaster would like to see you. And I immediately felt, because it sounded like a bit formal, she came herself, and it's not that like someone approached me during a break with a cup of coffee. Ben, just be careful next time. Maybe don't try not to be too keen to talk about this. So I remember just when I made my way towards the headmaster's office, I said to my superior, "So much for a safe space." I still didn't know what was coming, and the headmaster said, "Ben, what you said yesterday, upset some people or offended some people. I think he used that phrase. And some people even came up to me after the meeting and said they are afraid to talk to you now.
What?
Yes, they are afraid to. He may have used a more fancy expression like initiate a conversation with you or something like this, which is the same. Obviously, he also got an email that someone was really upset, and the headmaster admitted he talked to his deputy immediately after the meeting whether they should make a decision regarding my presence at the school there and then. But because it was a safe space, he told me they decided to have that conversation first. Right. I mean, it was just him, the headmaster, actually conducting the conversation. So he added, Ben, I wouldn't like you to express those views anymore at the school. I said, actually, I hadn't been doing this anyway, because that wasn't my role. I was a teacher assistant. I may have mentioned on 1 or 2 occasions, only where appropriate, when someone asks me, or if the subject of the lesson, was connected with something that I knew or I believed I might illustrate something with my views. So I said I had been doing this. I wasn't planning to really. And it's a bit strange that in a Christian school that should be such a problem. But I said, fine. I can. That's not my job. So yeah, I said no problem. But then I can't remember whether it was a result of one of his questions of something that he said, or more likely I added. But they will remain my views, and I may express them in my private life. For example, I said to him, I'm involved in some pro-life campaigns. So. It is likely I might say some of those things, for example, on social media. And he said, "Oh, that could damage the school's reputation. It could affect our image as a place of love, peace, and understanding." Or he said, "Christian love and inclusion." I think that was the phrase, which probably is somewhere also in the school's prospectus. So I said. But these are legitimate views. These are mainstream Christian views. So why should I refrain from expressing them? And my social accounts, for example, are not connected with the school. I had never mentioned anywhere I worked for this particular school. But he insisted, no, that could damage the school's reputation. So I asked him some follow-up questions. What other views would put me in trouble as far as my employment goes? I said, for example, I believe the government should be tougher on illegal immigration, or Britain generally should be tougher on illegal immigration. And he said that could be regarded as hate speech. I said, this is His Majesty's government's position, so that's a bit strange.
He said that about just simply being concerned about illegal migration.
And if someone insisted on tougher rules, I think I used the word tougher, but stricter, that could be, he didn't say it would automatically, but it could be viewed as hate speech. And at some point he added, Ben, if you expressed something like what you said yesterday, we would not like you to come back to school. So basically, if you say you believe that human life starts at conception, basically any Catholic, genuine Catholic or genuine Anglican or mainstream Anglican, because the Church of England or Anglican Church is a bit confused as a whole about some issues, of course, not consistent.
That's a very nice way of putting it.
Yeah, not consistent, or let's be even more delicate. But so if you're a conservative, traditional Christian, he simply said you can't work at the school. Funnily enough, I looked up later on some of their social media, so to speak, websites connected with the church in Wales. And for example, the Bishop of Llandaff, which is one of the bishops, it's close to Cardiff. Llandaff is now it's a suburb of Cardiff. It used to be one of the main Christian centres of ancient Christian Wales. So the Bishop of Llandaff, a woman at the moment, says the same on her website. Marriage is a gift from God between a man and a woman, husband and wife. So would she be able to work in the school that bears her title? So anyway, it was so. By the way, it was so shocking that at some point I secretly started recording the conversation.
Oh, good.
Because I thought nobody's gonna believe me. And first of all, I was outraged and I wanted a record of this. And secondly, I thought, I knew I would complain about what was happening, because he made it clear even in the middle of the conversation. I knew where it was going before he even said, you have to leave. So I knew it was obvious to me. So most of the conversation, and actually the bits where he says he is telling me to get out of the school because of my views, and views that hadn't even been expressed outside that safe space, but potentially. So it was like a potential. Yeah. He detected a subversive strand in my ideas, and just to nip it in the bud. He said, just before you post anything and we catch you red-handed, we'd better sack you. You're dangerous.
But did you at any point sort of say to him, the whole point of this seminar, presumably, was for us to be able to speak really, the teachers' seminar, and it's almost like you'd been sort of like victim of a setup almost. I mean, but it looks like that. So in other words, you take them at their word and you say, well, this is how, what I think, and then bang, you're sort of fine. Presumably, because you were through an agency,
yes, I worked.
There's no unfair dismissal situation.
No, although some I spoke to ACAS afterwards, and some of the rights that an employee would have also, I'm eligible to. I have some of those rights, so that's why, for example, I'm going to go before an employment tribunal against the school as well, not only against my agency, which sacked me later on for serious professional misconduct, just based on what the school told them. So, and so far I had been up to that moment. I had been a great TA, just praises. But suddenly, when they discovered I've got those subversive traditional views,
so basically, having kind of worked up to it, he then essentially said, that's it, we don't want you here.
Formally, I was thinking about this, but formally, and I see what you mean, it was a trap in the sense that it led me to express my views. Some of them might have guessed, because I must have mentioned a few times that I'm a Catholic. So, if you put two and two together, it's not rocket science to work out some of my beliefs. But formally, he wasn't sacking me for what I had said at that meeting, at that seminar, but for refusing not to say these things in the future in my private life, not even at the school.
In your private life.
In my private life. Most of the conversation I have recorded is where we are discussing, why should stuff that I might write on my social media, or even in some examples we talked about speaking in a public place like a pub. He said, yes, that could also damage the school's reputation. I said, how about if I get into a discussion like I sometimes do with strangers or friends, in a public place, in a pub, chatting about politics or ideas. He said, yes, that also could, if someone, knows that you work for the school, that could damage our reputation if you express Christian views, basically. Because we were only discussing, plus illegal immigration. That was the only one that I added during the meeting with him, during the conversation with him. So anyway, he was, sacking me for a potential crime, and just he decided, and this is how he phrased it actually at some point, either when he spoke or wrote to Daily Mail, or there was a letter or two letters the school wrote to parents, bigging everything up, if I may use the colloquial expression, saying that there was more to it than in the article, never specifying what it was, with one funny example, but I don't want to go there. What strange stuff they came up with. So anyway, so it was he decided that my views are simply dangerous for kids. To someone like with such views is a safeguarding issue, threat, for kids. So he also, not only he sacked me, he reported me to the local Welsh body that regulates educational workforce.
Right.
And they are investigating my case. They decided it merits investigation, also very strange, based on again, he may have added, the school may have invented something or put a spin on what I'm telling you now. And until they finish this investigation, I can't work in the state educational system, which I was. Yeah.
But see, when you talk, in very reasonable terms, your views are in a way sort of immaterial. But when you're talking about people saying to you, your, as it were, employer or not, you know what I mean,
Yes,
the head teacher, basically saying, you're having to weigh up. Will I be able to talk about this in the pub? Will I be able to do this in my private life? What struck me was, when I was sort of reading about you, was that obviously, you're from Poland. Did you experience, any part of growing up in communist Poland?
Yes, it was over. I remember the last decade. I was born a little bit earlier, but I consciously.
The last decade.
I remember the last decade of communism when it was a bit more relaxed, but also I remember the martial law when it wasn't relaxed actually, when there was this period of a few years of crackdown.
Yeah.
I was a primary school pupil. I do remember this time.
So therefore, this sort of thing, I mean, this must shock you about this country. I mean, you've been here for nearly 20 years now,
20 years.
but tell me what are the similarities? I mean, the reason I bring this up is that it seems to be just the creation of an atmosphere, which is basically, even doesn't require law in a way. It's just the creation of an atmosphere of fear.
Yes. There are some similarities and also differences. Both are interesting. The similarities are, for example, that I remember where you had to control yourself. You had to self-censor. Obviously, in some situations, so you would say some things openly with friends, family. You would make a joke about the party, the Communist Party, or the Soviet Union. But then in work, especially if in the presence of some people, because if you knew the atmosphere in many places, people didn't care, and that's one of the differences. Because when I consciously registered that I live in a communist, authoritarian, totalitarian state in many ways. It was the more relaxed, the end of it, so nobody really believed in it anymore. If someone did, we would treat them with pity, really. They would be eccentrics. And sometimes even we liked those who really still believed, like, madmen, who still believed in communism. Most people did it just for power, position, and it was only in place because of the Big Brother. Because Russia, actually, close to where I live, there were massive numbers of Russian soldiers, actually, just stone's throw away from where I was brought up. So this was everybody knew what's going on, and so in many places you didn't even have to pretend, unless your boss, who might be a party activist or whose role might be, there will always be in some workplaces at least a person or a group of people who had to at least pretend that they are still, defending their ideology, and they are vigilant, alert, to spot some subversive or overtly critical people. So that's the difference, that not many people believed it. Here, it seems, we are still at pretty early stages of a revolution that also wants to abolish traditional values, traditional way of life, traditional definitions, but we have really zealous guards, like red guards, young activists who really believe in the cause. So that is the difference.
Do you think
one of the differences?
Yes. Do you think? I mean, I think it's a very good point. We discuss this virtually all the time on this channel. Do you think there is something like a revolution going on? I mean, do you think? I sort of see it as being a kind of revolution from above, almost. That things are being imposed. We've seen it this week in an entirely different field, banking with Nigel Farage.
Yes.
That will still come as a surprise to many people. It seems to me that all of our institutions are infected, or should I say, they have this revolutionary zeal. But in your particular case, education, the most important of all.
Absolutely.
Actually.
And it is a very strange combination of factors, because there are definitely young, radical, ruthless, aggressive activists on the ground, on kind of ideological steroids, who really believe the old system is bad, if not evil. And also, one important thing that we seem to underestimate, they are ruthless, as I said, they don't play by the rules. So for example, when I watch programs like you do here, great programs, and they're very, very necessary, very important, where things are being explained, discussed, this is very important, but when you deal on the ground with some of those radical activists who believe in this new world where all the traditional definitions of marriage, family, heritage,
biology,
yes, will be sex, gender, will be overhauled completely. You need a different approach. You need a different approach. Obviously, it should happen in a civilized way, but we need to be much more determined, forceful. I believe we need to go, people like us, because I understand we agree about a number of issues, might disagree about some, but there are some really important areas where we probably would agree. So we need to go on a counter-offensive, I think. We are too mild, too meek, because they are ruthless. In my case, there's lies, there's fabrication of stuff, there's total disrespect to law. For example, the Equality Act. Why nobody at the school pointed out to the headmaster or whoever else was involved in the decision, oh guys, how about the Equality Act? Protected characteristics, faith, plus the irony that this is a Christian school. So no, it was so obvious they need to get rid of me. No rules. Obviously, when you put spotlight on them, they will pay lip service. They will pretend that, yes, of course, yes. No, we will first talk to him, and then maybe when the spotlight goes away, then we will. Within 2 weeks, we'll just say, "Oh, we don't need you anymore." Absolutely nothing to do with your views, but stuff like this. So we need to be more determined, more
less conciliatory, maybe.
Less conciliatory, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I like your British understatement.
Yeah,
more ruthless.
Well, no, maybe
more
that's
cojones, I would say.
Maybe that's part of the problem, actually, being too understated about it. I tend to agree. I think the thing is that when you say don't play by the rules, they would never treat you, these people, with maybe the courtesy that we might treat. They wouldn't dream of it. Wouldn't dream of it. Can be absolutely lethal.
Yes,
these people.
Because I think at that stage of the revolution, and probably some of them don't even realize fully what they are involved in. This is an early stage of an revolution, and you don't take prisoners. You need to be ruthless because we are the obstacle. The traditions, they really believe this is the problem. So, shall you play cricket? When you removing a massive evil problem of our civilization?
Yes, exactly.
They might say yes, of course, yes, freedom of speech, but when nobody's looking, just get rid of him. So, like in early Bolshevik,
Yeah, no,
I don't want to take this.
Yeah.
It's too far, this comparison, because thank God there's people lose jobs. Some people are, you mentioned earlier, if I may mention this now, that some people from time to time throw paint at your building just because of the views you express. So it's getting worse, but for thank God we are not yet at the stage.
Where does this all leave you then personally, Ben? I mean, in the sense that, there you are, you're not at the school anymore. Are you in? I know that you've been championed, haven't you, by the Free Speech Union, Toby Young, who's been on the show many times, and which is great. But are you in the middle of anything legal with the people, or you are?
Yes. Quite a few organizations and persons offered me help, legal help as well. The Free Speech Union was one of them, and one of the first. I'm really grateful. They've given me good advice. They offered me help for the future for my employment tribunal case, just like Christian Concern or Christian Legal Center. They've been brilliant as well. I met Andrea Williams personally, wonderful people. But I went with, finally I went with Paul Diamond, who actually was involved with Christian Legal Center at the very beginning for a while, because this choice, and Paul gave me more freedom as far as campaigning goes, or meetings, interviews like
Paul Diamond
that.
being...
Paul Diamond he's a very renowned barrister, one of the leading barristers as far as human rights, religious freedom goes in the UK. So he took some cases. He was involved in some very famous cases. One of them was an air hostess or BA employee who wore a cross.
Oh, famous
so
case.
He was defending her, as far as I can remember, and I think that went even to the European Court of Human Rights, or one of his cases. So and you know, he understands. He understands. I feel a need to campaign, to do something about this, to use my case to do something for the cause of free speech. So Paul, I felt Paul would give me more freedom than the other great organizations. I can't say anything wrong, and I'm really grateful that there are people like this, an organization like these, who offer people like me help in those moments, difficult moments.
You're going to be campaigning, which we'll just mention in a minute, but at the same time, you will be fighting a case.
Yes. The two cases are just about to be filed properly before an employment tribunal. One against the school, obviously, and the other one against the agency, who was very supportive. I mean, the managers of the agency were very supportive for a while. They seemed to sympathize with me and my story, not my version, because that's a true version. But then, after getting some really dodgy, because they sent me a copy of what some lawyer told them, or lawyers, I laughed out loud, actually, because it was so all over the place, and there were so many just things that a lawyer hypothesized about something and said, in this case, the person would imagine a situation and said, right, if something like this happens, it means Ben is guilty of this and this, and they forgot that they created a hypothetical situation, and actually quite unlikely, I guess, in my case. And then they believed in the image they saw. So it was really funny. Anyway, so the agency sacked me for serious professional misconduct. And I told them, listen, guys, you know everything about this case. And if you believe that just expressing my views in a safe space at school is serious professional misconduct, I will go after you. I can't let it, let it rest like that.
No, quite
let it be like that. Also, that messes up my CV. So yes, there will be two cases.
One thing, actually, before we talk about the campaign, is a few weeks ago we talked about on the channel. We talked about this report. You might remember. It's by Don't Divide Us. It's called "Who Are the Experts?" and it was basically talking about these third-party organisations. You mentioned one at the very beginning of our story, which was basically diverse Cymru.
Yes.
Right? Yes. And essentially, they are the ones brought into school. The point of this report was to go through what kind of things they're teaching. In this particular case, most of it's about racial politics and critical race theory.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the people who sort of like run these things, do you think that teachers and the headmaster who take these bodies on, do you think that they do it in the knowledge that these people are saying these things, or are they just simply naive to the point of being stupid?
It's a good question. I must point out that I hadn't been working in the state educational system for too long.
Right.
Not even 2 years, actually.
Right.
I had been working as a teacher, but for private language schools. Not to mention Poland. Completely different story. So a lot of what I'm going to say is based on conversations that I had with people who had been working for much longer, and it seems to me it's a mixture.
Yes,
it's a mixture. A lot of headmasters might not fully subscribe to a lot of these ideologies, but they know now this is a safe thing to do, or it is even the thing to do, because they know that if they refuse some of those guys, they might be in trouble because of the policies we talked about earlier. Because these people might say, "Oh, are you transphobic? You've got a problem with this," and they can launch a like a character assassination or some sort of campaign. And headmasters know about the fact that these guys can be ruthless. So it's like an easy,
like a mixture.
it's an easy option, and they've ticked the box. They might always say, I guess, if some of the stuff turns out to be too controversial, we just wanted, to be fair and to offer all possible options. But unfortunately, a lot of them do believe so. From my experience, the last headmaster, because I worked for 2 schools through that agency, and the Anglican school, I believe the headmaster genuinely believed in these things. He was genuinely woke.
Yeah. What's the situation now with campaigning then? You've got a campaign going, haven't you?
Yes. I got in touch with so far a couple of other people who went through similar story, similar situation, lost jobs because of their Christian views. One of them is Maureen Martin, who was a mayoral candidate in London a couple of years ago more. And she lost the job because of in her manifesto, she expressed support for, or her belief that marriage is between a man and a woman. By the way, she won not so long ago with the help of Christian Concern, or Christian Legal Centre, which is the legal branch of Christian Concern, I think £100,000.
Right.
And she has joined the campaign. There's another person who was also in the news a lot recently, but because of their separate fundraising effort to do with the case, we have delayed the announcement of who that will be. Maybe in the meantime we'll find more people. The idea is to to highlight the discrimination of Christians in Britain. And some other organizations like Christian Concern are doing this, but our idea is to get together as many people as possible who have experienced this themselves, to make it more attention, catching, so slightly different PR approach. But another thing, which we also hope will be commented and will cause some sort of stir, will make some waves, is a petition. We are planning a petition to the king.
Right.
When I was watching the Christian coronation not so long ago, I was listening to the wonderful oath. One of them, the traditional oath, where the king promises to do everything he can. I'm paraphrasing
defend
now.
the faith, for a start.
Yes, to defend the profession of true gospel. And then there was this new one, which was actually an oath of the Church of England, but it was read in front of the king, and he's the sovereign head of the church. And that oath included a phrase, to foster an environment in which people of all faith can live freely. And it struck me, it was some time after I lost my job, wouldn't it be nice if it covered Christians as well? And maybe we should take up the king on his word. Obviously, the king doesn't make pass laws in this country, but how about just speaking up? Just issuing the simplest of statements, I am concerned about this as a formal head of the church, the established Christian church, and I would like the parliament, because the CC of that petition will go to parliament, to do something about it. One might say we've got the Equality Act, but it's clear it's either not fit for purpose because of the content, I'm not a lawyer, or its interpretation is not fit for purpose, because we get these cases all the time, so it's not working. So we want to propose a new law. The final version is we haven't decided on yet, but it will the wording will be something like this: no person shall be discriminated against or prosecuted for holding and professing Christian beliefs. Full stop. And I think if you had a law like that, again, we are not naive. It's not very likely we will succeed. You never know. But at least we want to highlight the problem, wake people up.
Well, yes, and also it could put him, the king, on the spot a bit. There's no harm in that at all. And I mean, there's another way of looking at it. I say people are endlessly doing petitions to Parliament.
Yes.
I think
they become a bit boring.
Yes.
To ministers' parliament.
A different approach.
Yes.
Do you have a name for your campaign?
Not yet,
not
but you
yet.
can find information about the campaign on my website at the moment. We are working, we've
Right.
got a trial version of a website and a name,
Right.
but we haven't launched it formally yet. So if you want more information about the campaign, go to Ben Dybowski, BenDybowski.com. And there's information there also about an outline of the campaign. Also, fundraising is going on. I'll appreciate any help.
Well,
pay for the legal fees.
can people help you via that website?
Yes.
I mean, what we will do under this video is we'll put the link to your
Thank you very much
your
for that.
own website.
I appreciate it.
And also, you're on Twitter, right?
I am on Twitter. You can put Ben Dybowski, but whatever the proper word, the handle, I think it's called handle.
Oh, yeah,
on Twitter.
handle, yeah.
It's Wake Up, Speak Up One. Wake Up, Speak Up One. Because the Ben Dybowski was already taken by my personal account, so I wanted to create a new one,
Right.
just devoted to my case and
Right.
this cause. Wake Up, Speak Up One, or Ben Dybowski will easily
There you go.
recognize.
So
which one
basically,
it is.
that's great, and we will put those on the video too. You might find actually you get some help through this, because we've had people who are doing what you're doing. Amy Gallagher, for example, she's been on the show. In her case, it's the National Health Service, and they had quite a few donations coming their way as a result.
I would really appreciate if someone decides to help. The money will not be wasted. I'm really keen to use my case and get together with people with similar stories and wake some people up. I know we are not the only ones who are doing this, but we also are hoping of collaboration, of joining forces with other organizations, other people. United we stand, divided we fall. The problem at the moment is that a lot of people do a lot of wonderful things, and I know cooperation is not easy. I absolutely understand that at this stage in my life. But I think the circumstances we are in require that. This is not an ordinary problem we are fighting against. This is a really very serious situation that is deteriorating fast. So, you could also use another famous phrase. I think Benjamin Franklin said during the American Revolutionary War, either we hang together or we hang separately. Because they are picking us off one by one at the moment, and not enough people are willing to speak up or dare to speak up. I think there's room for cooperation. The same effort, but just jointly.
Indeed. Wise words. Ben, thank you very much for coming on.
Peter, thank you very much.
Absolute
it's
pleasure.
been a pleasure and
all the
also
very
honor,
best.
wonderful.
I'm sure our paths are going to cross again, actually. I'm sure they will.
I hope so.
Thank you. Ben, that's it for this week. We shall be back again next week, and please don't forget as well, do visit our new site where we've got our great documentary series, The West. It's westerncivilization.co.uk. See you. Hello. If you're enjoying the New Culture Forum channel and you believe in our mission, may I invite you to join our membership scheme at the link below or on our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. Our work is more important now than ever, and we have great plans ahead for the future, but we can't do it without your support. From as little as £3 per month, you can help ensure that we continue on our mission. As a member, you'll receive a range of benefits, including access to exclusive content, invitations to our private events, including here at our studios, free copies of our books, and much, much more, including, of course, our famous NCF mug. If you aren't able to become a member, then please help us by clicking this button and subscribing to our channel. It's completely free. Just remember to also click the bell icon so that you can get notifications when we post new videos. Thank you.